Two plants are growing across the world right now. One scored a perfect 100 out of 100 on the CDC nutrient density ranking, the only food to ever achieve this. The other contains more omega-3 fatty acids than any leafy green on the planet. Both grow in buckets with almost no effort, and they are not alone. There are 5 more plants just like them, 7 total that could replace your entire supplement cabinet. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what these plants are and how to grow unlimited protein, iron, and vitamins on your porch. 2 plants, both scientifically validated, both growing within walking distance of most viewers right now. One in your backyard, one in any container of still water. The first plant is probably growing within 50 feet of where you are sitting right now. Scientists call it Portulaca oleracea. Most people call it common purslane. And according to researchers, it is the most frequently reported weed species in the world. It grows in sidewalk cracks across North America. It thrives in driveways throughout Europe. It spreads through disturbed soil in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Australia. You have probably pulled it out of your garden and thrown it in the trash. Your parents did. Your grandparents did. Here's what they did not know. Scientific analysis of its chemical components has shown that this common weed has uncommon nutritional value. Researchers now call it one of the important foods for the future. Purslane has the highest level of alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3 fatty acid essential for human nutrition, compared to any leafy green vegetable. A 100-gram sample contains 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid. Wild purslane contains 4 milligrams per gram of wet weight. Compare that to spinach at 0.89 milligrams, buttercrunch lettuce at 0.26 milligrams, and mustard greens at 0.48 milligrams. Recent analyses revealed that alpha-linolenic acid accounted for 60 to 67% of the leaf fatty acids in purslane. And here is the detail the supplement industry does not want you to know. Unlike fish oils, purslane contains no cholesterol. You are paying $30 to $50 for fish oil supplements when this grows free in disturbed soil. The vitamin content makes this plant even more remarkable. Purslane provides 6 times more vitamin E than spinach. It contains 7 times more beta-carotene than carrots. The vitamin A content in purslane is approximately 9.4 times greater than that in tomatoes. It is 12.8 times greater than in broccoli. A 100-gram portion delivers 26% of the daily value for vitamin A from beta-carotene. It provides 35% of the daily value for vitamin C. It contains 17% of the daily value for magnesium, 15% for manganese, 14% for potassium, 11% for iron, and 7% for calcium. You get all of these nutrients with only 16 calories. This makes it one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, calorie for calorie. The mineral profile confirms what traditional cultures knew for centuries. Purslane is a rich source of potassium at 494 milligrams per 100 grams. It is followed by magnesium at 68 milligrams and calcium at 65 milligrams. The iron content reaches 72 milligrams per 100 grams on a dry weight basis. The zinc content is 5.83 milligrams per 100 grams. Growing purslane requires almost no effort. This species is extremely drought tolerant due partially to water storage in the succulent leaves and stems. It has small stomates and a waxy outer layer on the leaves, both of which reduce water loss. This easy-to-grow green can be integrated into row cropping, container gardens, raised beds, and more. Provide well-drained, average-to-poor soil. Space plants 9 to 12 inches apart. As a succulent, purslane does not like damp conditions, so drainage is essential. This plant does not need rich soil and does well in low-quality soil. It grows in any container with drainage holes. Seeds germinate in 14 to 21 days in warm soil. It self-seeds prolifically. Plant once, harvest for years. I need to tell you something important about oxalates. Purslane contains high amounts of oxalates. This can be an issue for people who tend to develop kidney stones. But here is the solution. Brief cooking for 5 minutes in boiling water can reduce soluble oxalate by up to 33.5% in the leaves and by 18% in the stems. Pickling purslane in a vinegar solution reduced around 66.7% of soluble oxalate. If you are concerned about the oxalate content, try adding it to yogurt, which has been shown to significantly reduce the amount of oxalates. But purslane is just the beginning. The second plant scored something no other food has ever achieved. Watercress is the most nutrient-dense vegetable, receiving a perfect score of 100 in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention long-standing ranking of powerhouse fruits and vegetables. It is the food that scored 100 out of 100 on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention rigorous nutrient density assessment. It is the only food to achieve a perfect score across 17 nutrients per 100 calories. This is not a marketing claim. This is not a wellness influencer ranking. This is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Chinese cabbage is a close second with a score of 91.99. Chard follows at 89.27. Beet greens score 87.08. Spinach scores 86.43. Kale, which receives far more popular attention, scored 49.07. The contrast reveals the marketing distortion. Kale scores 49, watercress scores 100. Yet which one fills the grocery stores? Which one gets the celebrity endorsements? Which one commands premium prices? Nutrient density compares the nutrients a food contains to the calories it provides. Watercress is an extremely nutrient-dense food at only 4 calories per cup. Watercress is one of the highest dietary sources of vitamin K, one among commonly consumed vegetables. A 100-gram serving provides approximately 250 micrograms. That is more than twice the adequate intake for adults. Watercress is high in iron, calcium, and folic acid. It is rich in vitamins A and C. It is a notable source of minerals including calcium, iron, iodine, phosphorus, magnesium, copper, and flavonoids, particularly quercetin, rutin, and chiampherol. Unlike many other vegetables, watercress contains highly absorbable iron. The cancer prevention science makes this plant even more significant. Watercress is a rich source of phytochemicals with anti-cancer potential, including phenylethyl isothiocyanate, PEITC. Watercress is an excellent source of gluconasturtian, the precursor to PEITC, demonstrated in numerous studies to have potential cancer protective effects. Multiple studies in laboratory animals demonstrated the ability of PEITC to inhibit lung carcinogenesis. In one study, researchers observed virtually complete inhibition of a specific carcinogen-induced rat lung carcinogenesis by PEITC. Research published in cancer prevention journals showed that consumption of watercress at 85 grams daily for 8 weeks was associated with reductions in DNA damage. The effect was greater in smokers than non-smokers. Watercress may play a role in cancer prevention due to its glucosinolate-derived compounds like PEITC. Research indicates that PEITC can inhibit cancer cell proliferation and enhance cell apoptosis. The additional health benefits extend beyond cancer prevention. Its low glycemic index and high fiber content aid in blood sugar regulation by increasing insulin production and utilization. This benefits individuals with diabetes. The vegetable also contains compounds like beta-carotene, lutein, and zeaxanthin, which support heart health and improve blood vessel function. The nitrates in watercress are known to lower blood pressure, further protecting your cardiovascular system. Growing watercress is simpler than most people realize. This semi-aquatic crop is well suited for indoor hydroponic cultivation. In the garden, place potted plants in a bucket with 2 to 3 inches of water so the growing media stays wet and the roots are submerged. It is best to change the water once or twice a week. Starting a patch of watercress is as easy as rooting stem cuttings from store-bought watercress. The best part is that once the cuttings have rooted, you can eat the tender leaves. Within approximately 1 week, roots should start sprouting. Once they reach about 1 inch long, transfer them into larger containers with nutrient-rich hydroponic solution for optimal growth. Watercress is also a perennial. If it is established in a more permanent growing position, it will come back year after year. Use the cut and come again method of harvesting with watercress. Harvest from the base of the edible stems and new shoots will emerge. Traditional cultures never forgot this plant. Chinese medicine has used it for centuries. British tradition features watercress sandwiches. It appears in cuisines across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The peppery taste and pungency of watercress comes from mustard oils, and they are known to help reduce inflammation and chronic cellular damage. And these two are not alone. There are at least 5 more.
If you have ever wondered why growing your own protein feels impossible while corporations profit from your dependence, you are about to discover something that changes everything. For generations in northern Thailand, families have harvested tiny green spheres from still water. No farm needed, no fertilizer purchased. Just a wooden bucket, and patience measured in hours, not months. They called it puem. Their grandchildren called it breakfast. The plant floated on calm ponds and drainage ditches. It required nothing but water and sunlight. Yet it provided something that should have been impossible. Complete protein, every essential amino acid, growing faster than anything Western agriculture had ever seen. Then a scientist at Rutgers University noticed what indigenous communities already knew. Dr. Eric Lamb saw a plant so small you could fit dozens on a single fingernail. It grew so fast, it defied everything modern agriculture taught us about efficiency. When NASA started searching for food to grow on space stations, they tested every candidate imaginable. They tested lettuce, soybeans, wheat, and potatoes. One plant outperformed them all. The same protein source a Thai grandmother harvests from buckets now feeds astronauts in orbit. The same plant, Western science ignored for decades, became the centerpiece of space food research. We have been told protein requires vast land, intensive farming, and months of growth cycles. This plant laughs at those rules. Picture this. Day 1, you place a thin green film on still water. Barely visible. Just a scattering of dots, smaller than lentils floating on the surface. Day 3, a carpet so thick you cannot see the water beneath. The green has multiplied into a dense mat covering everything. Day 5, you scoop out handfuls and the bucket looks exactly as full as before. The plant replaced itself overnight. Each frond is smaller than a grain of rice, bright green. No roots visible on most species, just pure concentrated nutrition floating like living emeralds. The texture is soft, almost silky when fresh. In Thai cuisine, they serve it in omelets and soups. The taste surprises everyone who tries it. Mild, clean, slightly nutty. Nothing like the pond scum its appearance suggests. Dry it, powder it, and you now hold something with more protein per gram than most things in your refrigerator. Now let me show you the numbers that do not make sense until you see them yourself. Researchers Appenroth and colleagues published their findings in Food Chemistry in 2017. Duckweed protein content ranges from 20 to 45% dry weight. For comparison, beef is about 26% protein. Eggs are around 13%. Soybeans come in at 36% on a good day. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry in 2024 found that one species called Lemna gibba reached 45% crude protein. The amino acid profile is complete. All essential amino acids are present, meeting or exceeding World Health Organization requirements for human nutrition. The protein inside this plant is mostly something called rubisco, the most abundant protein on Earth, the same molecule that makes plants convert sunlight into food, concentrated into something you can eat directly. Here is where it gets strange. Current Biology published a paper in 2023 that made scientists reconsider everything they knew about plant growth. Under favorable conditions, duckweed doubles its biomass clonally in 48 to 72 hours. A 2025 paper in Scientific Reports called it the closest plant to what researchers call the Darwin-Wallace demons, the theoretical organism that reproduces as fast as mathematically possible. Ziegler and colleagues measured doubling times as fast as 1.34 days. Some species approach 16 hours under perfect conditions. Compare this to anything else you might grow. Soybeans need 90 days minimum. Beef cattle need 18 months to reach slaughter weight. This plant doubles before most people remember to water their houseplants. Now here is where conventional agriculture falls apart completely. A 2024 paper in Science Direct compiled the numbers across multiple studies. Duckweed yields 2,080 kilograms of protein per hectare per year. Soybeans produce 303 kilograms per hectare per year. Corn produces 179 kilograms per hectare per year. That is not a small difference. Duckweed produces nearly 7 times more protein per unit of land than soy and 10 times more than corn. ACS Food Science and Technology went even further. Under optimal European greenhouse conditions, duckweed yields 10 to 18 tons of protein per hectare per year. Soy in the same region produces 0.6 to 1.2 tons. One researcher summarized it simply: the surface of a small pond can outproduce an entire soybean field. The environmental numbers destroy every argument for industrial meat production. Food and bioprocess. Technology published data in 2025 showing duckweed produces 0.4 kilograms of carbon dioxide, equivalent per kilogram of plant material. Beef produces 27 kilograms of carbon dioxide, equivalent per kilogram. That is nearly 70 times the environmental impact. Duckweed needs no tractors, no pesticides, and no competition for cropland. It grows on water that would otherwise sit unused. So why did this knowledge disappear from Western awareness? 3 reasons compound each other. First, it looks like pond scum. Western agriculture values appearance and size. The visual spectacle of a cornfield draws attention. A plant you need a magnifying glass to appreciate does not photograph well for farm subsidies. Nobody brags about their floating green carpet the way they brag about their tomato harvest. Second, it cannot be patented in its natural form. No seed company profits from something that reproduces by splitting in half. No equipment manufacturer sells specialized duckweed tractors. No processing facility stands between you and your food. Every middleman in industrial agriculture loses money when you grow protein in a bucket. Third, the industrial food system depends on complexity. It relies on long supply chains, storage infrastructure, and processing facilities. A plant that grows itself in any container threatens the entire model. But in northern and northeastern Thailand, this knowledge never disappeared. They call it Kai Nam, eggs of the water. The genus Wolffia has been featured in local cuisine for centuries, served fresh in omelets and stirred into soups. It was such an obvious protein source that they never needed to rediscover it. Dr. Wayne Armstrong at California State University spent decades documenting every duckweed species on Earth. He found Wolffia globosa growing wild within miles of major American universities, the same plant Thai grandmothers harvest. It was floating unnoticed in American ponds, hidden in plain sight. Then, space travel changed the equation. NASA needed food that grew fast in small spaces with minimal inputs. Suddenly, duckweed mattered to people with funding. The Translational Research Institute for Space Health partnered with University of Colorado Boulder. Their finding, published in 2020, shook everything researchers thought they knew. Duckweed is the most protein-dense plant on the planet. It produces radiation-fighting antioxidants called zeaxanthin and lutein. It thrives under artificial light at half the intensity of normal sunlight. The first space test happened in 1966. Duckweed flew on the orbital vehicle satellite alongside chlorella algae. That was decades before most Americans heard the word superfood, and before protein powder became a billion-dollar industry. NASA already knew what this plant could do. They tested it on the Mir space station. They grew it in the closed, equilibrated biological aquatic system. Research published in 2024 showed that just 600 grams of fresh wolfie could meet an adult astronaut's daily protein needs. Now, I promised you the 5-minute setup. Here is exactly how to do it. You need any container that holds water. A 5-gallon bucket works perfectly. A plastic storage bin works too. A kiddie pool is good for larger production. Even a glass baking dish on a windowsill will do. Choose shallow and wide containers, not deep and narrow. Duckweed only grows on the surface. 3 inches of water depth is plenty. More surface area means more growth space. For water, you can use dechlorinated tap water. Rainwater works even better. Pond water is ideal if you have access. If you use tap water, let it sit overnight in an open container so the chlorine can evaporate naturally. You can also add a water conditioner from any pet store. The pH should be between 6 and 7.5. Most tap water already falls in this range. For nutrients, you have several options. Fish tank water is perfect. The nitrogen from fish waste gives duckweed exactly what it needs. If you do not have a fish tank, dilute any balanced liquid fertilizer to 1/5 the strength recommended on the label. You can also add a few drops of aquarium plant food each week. Even a tiny amount of organic matter, like a decaying leaf, provides enough nutrients to get started. Now, the duckweed itself. Float your starter on the surface, starting with enough to cover 10 to 20% of the water. You can find duckweed in local ponds, order it online, or get some from a friend with an aquarium. 1 tablespoon is enough to start an entire bucket. Place your container where it receives bright indirect light, 6 hours minimum. A sunny window works, and a shaded patio will work as well. Direct hot sun all day can overheat the water, but duckweed tolerates more variation than you might expect. Temperatures between 60 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit are ideal. That is the entire setup. Walk away. 48 to 72 hours later, the coverage has doubled. You will not believe how fast it happens until you see it yourself. By day 5, you can harvest. Skim half the surface with a small net or kitchen strainer. Leave the other half to keep growing. Rinse the harvested plants. Pat dry. Use them fresh in salads or smoothies, or spread thin on a tray to dry for protein powder. One critical warning: never dump duckweed into natural waterways. In some regions, it can become invasive. Compost any excess. Feed it to chickens. Give it to fish. Add it to livestock feed. It benefits nearly every animal that eats plants. The aquaponics community discovered this years ago. Tilapia farmers cut feed costs by 50% using duckweed. Backyard chicken keepers noticed their egg yolks turned deeper orange within weeks. Homesteaders in Arizona grow more protein in a 50-gallon storage tote than their neighbors grow on 2 acres of alfalfa. Commercial interest is exploding. A company called Parabel USA developed a protein ingredient from water lentils called lentine. Heinemann in Israel sells wolfia as a superfood supplement called mankai. The same plant, available for free in most temperate ponds, now commands premium prices in health food stores. What grandmothers harvested for generations became a venture capital darling overnight. Here is what they never wanted you to understand. Protein independence requires neither wealth nor acreage nor permission from industrial agriculture. The solution floated on every neglected pond and forgotten drainage ditch all along. The Thai grandmother knew. NASA scientists know. Now you know.
The archive begins floating on still water. Picture a pond covered in what looks like green velvet. Tiny fronds no larger than a grain of rice cluster together in dense mats that spread across the surface. From a distance, it resembles moss. Up close, each plant reveals delicate, overlapping leaves arranged like miniature shingles. This is Azolla, the mosquito fern. Hidden within its tissues lives the oldest partnership in the plant kingdom. Nestled inside specialized cavities in every Azolla leaf dwells a microscopic organism called Anabaena azolli. This cyanobacterium has been passing from Azolla parent to offspring for over 100 million years. Unlike any other plant symbiosis known to science, this one is inherited directly. The two organisms have co-evolved so completely that neither can survive without the other. And together they perform a trick that should be impossible. They pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and convert it into fertilizer. No soil required, no synthetic inputs, just water, sunlight, and air. The numbers are staggering. Legumes like soybeans, long celebrated for nitrogen fixation, produce roughly 400 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. Azolla produces 1,100 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year, nearly 3 times as much. A study published in the Journal of the Science of Food and Agriculture measured protein content at 19 to 30% of dry weight. For comparison, whole eggs contain about 13% protein, and soybeans contain about 36% protein. But soybeans require fertile soil, irrigation, and an entire growing season. Azolla doubles its biomass every 2 to 3 days. Under optimal conditions, it can yield 9 tons of protein per hectare per year. No other food source on Earth comes close. Travel now to the Fujian province of southern China. The year is 540 CE. A scholar named Jia Sixi is compiling an agricultural encyclopedia called Qimin Yaoshu, Essential Techniques for the Welfare of the People. Among the hundreds of farming methods he documents is a practice already ancient by his time. Rice farmers are growing a floating fern alongside their paddies. When they incorporate this fern into the soil, their rice yields increase dramatically. They need no other fertilizer. This is the earliest written record of Azolla cultivation, but the practice itself stretches back thousands of years. In northern Vietnam, villages built temples to honor this plant. Wooden idols carved in its likeness stood in shrines where farmers came to pay respect. In the village of Beach Du, an annual festival celebrated the harvest of what locals called Bao Giong. Only a handful of families knew the secret of keeping Azolla alive through the brutal summer heat. They guarded this knowledge through systems of inheritance, passing techniques from generation to generation. Farmers from distant provinces would travel to these villages each year to purchase starter cultures because their own plants had perished. The knowledge was spreading. By 1973, the Vietnamese government had established over 100 depots to cultivate and distribute Azolla. 500,000 hectares of rice paddies in northern Vietnam used this living fertilizer. Yields increased by 20% or more. The knowledge was spreading. Picture the nutritional profile. Researchers at Penn State University published findings in 2024 confirming what Asian farmers knew for centuries. The Carolina strain, native to the eastern United States, contains significant protein with apparent digestibility of 78%. The plant provides vitamin A, vitamin B12, beta-carotene, iron, calcium, magnesium, and essential amino acids in proportions superior to soybean. Lead researcher Daniel Winstead described it as having a crisp texture and neutral taste. It can be eaten raw in salads, cooked like spinach, or dried and ground into flour. A complete food source that requires nothing but water to grow. But the story of Azolla extends far beyond human agriculture. 49 million years ago, during the Middle Eocene epoch, the Arctic Ocean was unrecognizable. Palm trees lined its shores. Crocodiles swam in warm tropical waters. The global average temperature was 8 degrees Celsius higher than today. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels had reached 3,500 parts per million, nearly 9 times current levels. The planet was locked in a runaway greenhouse state. Then something extraordinary happened. Due to continental drift, the Arctic Ocean had become almost entirely landlocked. Greenland, Europe, Asia, and North America formed a ring around this enclosed sea. Heavy rainfall carried fresh water from rivers into the basin, creating a thin layer of low salinity water floating on the denser ocean beneath. This freshwater lens was all Azolla needed. The fern colonized the Arctic surface and began to spread. Picture 4 million square kilometers of water, an area larger than India, slowly turning green as floating mats of Azolla expanded across the entire basin. In 2004, a scientific expedition called the Arctic Coring Expedition sailed to the Lomonosov Ridge near the North Pole. The research vessel Vidar Viking drilled into sediments beneath the Arctic seabed and extracted cores stretching back 80 million years. Scientists aboard made a discovery that rewrote climate history. Layer after layer of the cores contained nothing but fossilized Azolla remains, 8 meters thick at minimum, perhaps 20 meters or more. The bottom of the deposit was never reached. Scientist Henk Brinkhuis, now director of the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research, examined the samples and found hundreds of thousands of fossils that looked like slimy balls with spaghetti strings sticking out. These were Azolla spores perfectly preserved in sediment. The plants had grown, died, and sunk to the anoxic seafloor, where lack of oxygen prevented decomposition. For 800,000 years, this cycle continued. Azolla grew on the surface, absorbed carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, died, and carried that carbon to the bottom of the sea, permanently. The atmospheric record tells the rest of the story. During the Azolla event, carbon dioxide levels plummeted from 3,500 parts per million to 650 parts per million, an 80% reduction. This drawdown triggered a cascade of planetary cooling. Arctic surface water temperatures dropped from 13 degrees Celsius to -9 degrees Celsius. The poles began to freeze. Antarctica developed its first permanent ice sheets. The transition from greenhouse Earth to icehouse Earth had begun. One tiny floating fern had reshaped the climate of an entire planet. Consider what this means for our current crisis. Today, atmospheric carbon dioxide sits around 420 parts per million and climbing. Scientists estimate that each 1 hectare Azolla pond can capture over 21,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide annually. Researchers at the Climate Foundation and universities worldwide are investigating whether Azolla could help reverse modern warming. The plant that ended a planetary heat emergency 50 million years ago might have something to teach us about the one we face today. But here is where the vault grows dark. In 1909, German chemists Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch developed a process for synthesizing ammonia from atmospheric nitrogen. This breakthrough earned Haber the Nobel Prize and changed human civilization forever. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizer enabled the agricultural intensification that fed a rapidly growing global population. It also created a $200 billion industry dependent on fossil fuels and chemical manufacturing. Before the 1960s, Chinese farmers used Azolla on over 1,300,000 hectares of rice paddies. The plant provided free nitrogen, suppressed weeds, reduced water evaporation, and improved soil structure. Then synthetic fertilizers arrived. Government subsidies made chemical nitrogen artificially cheap. Agricultural extension programs promoted modern inputs over traditional practices. Within a generation, Azolla cultivation collapsed. The same pattern repeated worldwide. In Vietnam, in India, across Southeast Asia. By 2020, global nitrogen fertilizer consumption had doubled from 1970 levels. Meanwhile, over half of all applied synthetic nitrogen never reaches the crops it was meant to feed. It leaches into groundwater, it runs off into rivers and oceans, it volatilizes into the atmosphere as nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Picture the Gulf of Mexico. Every summer, a dead zone forms off the coast of Louisiana, an area exceeding 17,000 square kilometers, where oxygen levels drop so low that fish and shrimp cannot survive. The cause is nutrient runoff from farms throughout the Mississippi River watershed. Nitrogen and phosphorus from synthetic fertilizers flow downstream, triggering massive algae blooms that deplete oxygen as they decompose. The United Nations has identified these dead zones as one of the most significant environmental threats facing the planet. Some exceed 70,000 square kilometers, and they are growing. Now examine the regulatory landscape in the United States. the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service of the USDA, maintains a federal noxious weed list. Among the species classified as threats requiring eradication is Azolla pinnata, the feathered mosquito fern, the same species that Vietnamese farmers honored in temples, the same species that Chinese agricultural texts documented 15 centuries ago, the same species that could replace a significant portion of synthetic nitrogen use. It is now illegal to transport across state lines. The justification for this classification is that Azolla can form dense mats that alter aquatic ecosystems. This is true. The plant grows aggressively. It can double its coverage in days. It reduces light penetration and changes oxygen dynamics in water bodies. These are legitimate ecological concerns. But consider the framing. A plant that blocks light is labeled invasive and banned. Meanwhile, synthetic fertilizer runoff creates dead zones the size of small countries, and no one classifies that as an ecological threat requiring prohibition. The pattern should look familiar. White clover was removed from American seed mixes and rebranded as a weed after chemical companies began selling herbicides to kill it. Jerusalem artichoke was marginalized despite outperforming potatoes in yield because it could not be mechanized and monetized. Azolla joined this list of buried abundance, plants that work too well, that cost too little, that threaten the profit margins of industries built on scarcity. But here is what they did not count on. Azolla refuses to disappear. In Tamil Nadu, India, the Natural Resources Development Project has spent decades teaching smallholder farmers to cultivate Azolla in backyard ponds. The method is simple. Dig a shallow pit 2 meters by 2 meters. Line it with plastic sheeting. Add 10 centimeters of water, some soil, and a small amount of cow dung for phosphorus. Introduce a starter culture of Azolla. Within 2 weeks, the surface is covered. Harvest daily by scooping excess biomass with a plastic sieve. Feed it fresh to dairy cattle mixed with regular fodder. Milk yields increase 15 to 20%. Feed costs drop dramatically. Farmers across India are adopting this practice not because governments recommend it, but because it works. In the Senegal River Valley, researchers published findings in 2025 demonstrating that Azolla can replace 1/4 of synthetic urea applications while maintaining or increasing rice yields. Farmers in the study reported lower input costs and greater food security. The knowledge is spreading through Africa, just as it once spread through Asia, not through corporate promotion, but through farmer-to-farmer networks sharing what actually works. In laboratories from Beijing to Boston, scientists are investigating Azolla for applications beyond agriculture. Chinese researchers have demonstrated that 16 square meters of Azolla cultivation provides enough oxygen for 2 adults in a closed ecological life support system. NASA has studied related species for potential use in space colonies. Biosphere 2, the famous closed ecosystem experiment in Arizona, used Azolla as a protein source for fish and poultry. The plant that grew without soil on a distant planet 50 million years ago might help us colonize others. The question is not whether Azolla works. 15 centuries of documented agricultural use prove that it works. The question is not whether it is safe. Billions of people across Asia have consumed it directly or eaten animals raised on it. The question is not whether modern science validates traditional knowledge. Peer-reviewed studies in respected journals confirm everything farmers knew all along. The question is simply this: who benefits when free resources are classified as threats? Picture a world where every farm pond produces its own nitrogen fertilizer, where smallholder farmers no longer depend on volatile global commodity markets for inputs, where protein grows on water and air with no environmental footprint, where the dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico begin to shrink because nitrogen no longer pours off agricultural fields. This is not fantasy. This is what Azolla offers. This is what they buried. The plant is still out there, floating on ponds and ditches across 6 continents, doubling every few days, making protein from nothing, fixing nitrogen from air, waiting for someone to remember. 49 million years ago, it cooled a burning planet. 1,500 years ago, it fed civilizations. Today, it sits on a list of noxious weeds. The vault is open now. The question is whether you will believe the label they gave it, or whether you will grow it anyway, and discover what they spent a century teaching you to forget.
Walk into any restaurant in Colombo tonight. Watch the table next to you. They will be eating a fresh salad of finely chopped green leaves mixed with chili and coconut. This is not spinach. This is not lettuce. This is Gotu Kola, and it is one of Sri Lanka's most beloved dishes. They call it Gotu Kola Sambal. In Thailand, street vendors sell a bright green juice from morning until night. Tourists assume it is some kind of spinach smoothie. It is not. It is Nam Bai Bua Bok, made from the same plant, consumed for energy, clarity, and skin that glows. In India, they call it Manduka Parni. Traditional Ayurvedic practitioners have prescribed it for 40 different conditions: wound healing, skin inflammation, mental clarity, nervous disorders. The documentation fills thousands of pages in texts that Western researchers never translated. Here is the first clue that something went wrong. You know aloe vera, you know turmeric, you know green tea and vitamin C serum. These ingredients sit in every Western skincare aisle. But Gotu Kola, used by more people for skin health than all those ingredients combined, barely exists in Western consciousness. Most Americans have never heard the name. The problem begins with fragmentation. Sri Lankans call it Gotu Kola, Indians call it Brahmi or Manduka Parni, the Chinese call it Ji Shui Kao, Thai speakers call it Bai Bua Bok, botanists call it Centella asiatica, Western databases call it Asiatic pennywort or tiger grass, 6 names for one plant. No unified identity in English. When a plant has no consistent name, it has no consistent presence in research databases, skincare formulations, or marketing campaigns. The fragmentation was not intentional. The result was erasure. Compare this to collagen peptides. Same molecule regardless of source, same name in every language, same branding across every product. Everyone knows collagen. It appears in every beauty store and pharmacy. Gotu Kola never received this unification. It remained foreign in each separate encounter, never familiar, never integrated, never understood. The ancient record tells a different story. In India, around 300 CE, scholars compiled a text called the Sushruta Samhita. This is one of the oldest surviving medical encyclopedias in human history. Gotu Kola appears prominently in its pages. The text describes using the leaves for wound healing and skin conditions. 1700 years ago, Indian physicians understood this plant's value. Another classical text called the Karaka Samhita classified Gotu Kola as a Madhya Rasayana. This is a designation reserved for herbs considered rejuvenating for the mind and body. Within Ayurveda, this classification represents the highest tier of healing plants. It was the equivalent of a 5-star rating in modern terms. In China, the plant earned legendary status. Legends speak of a healer named Li Qing-yun, who reportedly lived 256 years by drinking tea brewed from Gotu Kola and other herbs. Whether the legend is true matters less than what it reveals. The Chinese considered this plant so powerful they associated it with immortality itself. Gotu Kola appears in the Shenong Herbal, a pharmacological text compiled in China over 2,000 years ago. The plant has distinctive round leaves. Ancient healers noticed these leaves looked like the shape of a human brain. This observation aligned with the doctrine of signatures, an ancient belief that herbs resemble the body parts they are meant to heal. Indian practitioners taught that Gotu Kola develops the crown chakra, the energy center at the top of the head. They believed it balanced the right and left hemispheres of the brain. In India, the plant earned another name, tiger grass. The reason is remarkable. Wounded Bengal tigers were observed rolling themselves in patches of Gotu Kola to heal their wounds. Villagers noticed injured tigers seeking out these specific plants. The tigers knew something that Western science would take centuries to confirm. France officially recognized Gotu Kola as a medicinal drug in the 1880s. French colonial physicians in Madagascar documented its wound healing properties. They incorporated it into the French pharmacopoeia. For a brief moment, the West acknowledged what Asia had known for millennia, then silence. The 20th century arrived with its pharmaceutical revolution. Patentable molecules became the currency of medicine. A plant that grew wild in ditches could not compete with laboratory compounds that generated licensing fees. But here is what matters most for understanding this plant. Gotu kola spreads with a ferocity that borders on aggression. A single plant produces long horizontal stems called stolons that extend up to 250 centimeters. These stolons root at every node where they touch soil. Within weeks, a single cutting becomes a carpet of new plants. And take a healthy 4 to 6 inch segment of a runner, cut just below a leaf node, place it in moist soil or even a glass of water. Roots develop within 10 to 14 days, sometimes faster. The plant does not wait for permission, it simply grows. Gardeners in tropical climates often consider Gotu kola a weed. It spreads into lawns, around foundations, through flower beds. They pull it out by the handful. Meanwhile, consumers in those same countries pay premium prices for collagen supplements shipped from factories across oceans. Now let us examine what modern science has finally confirmed. In 1999, researchers published findings in a study that would change everything. They tested Asiaticoside, the primary active compound in Gotu kola, on wound healing in guinea pigs. Topical application of a 0.2% solution produced a 56% increase in hydroxyproline. Hydroxyproline is a direct marker of collagen synthesis. The same treatment produced a 57% increase in tensile strength. The wounds healed faster. They healed stronger. The collagen content increased measurably. This was not folklore. This was laboratory science published in peer-reviewed literature. In 2020, Indonesian researchers published even more dramatic findings. They tested a cream containing 10% Gotu kola extract on human subjects. After 4 weeks of application, collagen levels increased by an average of 77.89%, nearly 80% more collagen from a plant that grows like a weed. The active compounds responsible for these effects have been identified precisely: Asiaticoside, Madecassoside, Asiatic acid, Madecassic acid. These molecules belong to a class called triterpenoids. They work by stimulating fibroblasts, the cells responsible for producing collagen in your skin. The stimulation is not subtle, it is dramatic and measurable. Research published in 2024 in the journal Pharmaceutics confirmed the mechanism. Gotu kola extracts enhance collagen synthesis through multiple pathways. They increase type 1 collagen production. Type 1 collagen is the most abundant form in human skin, tendons, and bone tissue. The same research documented anti-inflammatory effects and antioxidant protection. Studies using human dermal fibroblasts showed that both water-based and alcohol-based extracts of Gotu kola increase type 1 collagen and fibronectin synthesis. Fibronectin is another critical protein for skin structure and wound healing. The effects were consistent across multiple research methodologies. The compound Asiaticoside, at concentrations of 30 micrograms per milliliter, induces genes associated with skin cell proliferation. It promotes skin cell migration, attachment, and growth. These are precisely the processes that slow down as we age. These are precisely the processes that the collagen industry claims to address with expensive supplements. Clinical trials on human patients have confirmed what laboratory studies suggested. In one trial, 170 patients with diabetic wounds received oral capsules containing 50 milligrams of Asiaticoside 3 times daily. Compared to the control group, the treatment group showed significant increases in wound contraction at every time point measured. The treatment also suppressed scarring. Diabetic wounds are notoriously difficult to heal. The impaired circulation and metabolic dysfunction of diabetes creates wounds that linger for months or years. Standard treatments often fail, yet a compound from a plant growing wild in Asian ditches accelerated healing measurably. Another study tested a Gotu kola hydrogel formulation against commercial wound healing products. The hydrogel enhanced wound healing 15% faster than the commercial cream. It healed wounds more than 40% faster than untreated controls, 40% faster from a plant extract. The applications extend beyond wound healing. Asiaticoside has been shown to prevent the formation of keloids and hypertrophic scars. These are the raised, discolored scars that form when collagen production goes into overdrive during healing. The compound works by increasing the activity of immature collagen and myofibroblasts in a controlled manner. A placebo-controlled study tested a compound cream containing gotu kola extract on pregnant women at risk of stretch marks. Fewer women in the treatment group developed stretch marks compared to placebo. The mechanism involved stimulating maturation of scar tissue through production of type 1 collagen in a controlled manner. Korean researchers have taken particular interest in gotu kola over the past decade. Seoul National University published multiple studies examining the molecular pathways activated by the plant's triterpenoids. They discovered that asiatic acid specifically upregulates transforming growth factor beta, a signaling protein essential for collagen deposition. This finding explained why the plant works so effectively on aging skin. The same signaling pathway that declines with age is precisely what gotu kola activates. In 2022, a team at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok conducted a randomized double-blind trial on 60 women aged 40 to 60. Half received a serum containing 5% Centella asiatica extract. Half received a placebo serum. After 8 weeks, the treatment group showed measurable improvements in skin elasticity, hydration, and wrinkle depth. The researchers used sophisticated imaging equipment to document the changes. The before and after photographs showed visible differences that even untrained observers could identify. Japanese cosmetic scientists at Shiseido Laboratories have quietly incorporated Centella asiatica into premium product lines for years. They call it CISA, derived from the botanical name cicatrix, meaning scar. The Korean beauty industry followed suit. Walk through any cosmetics district in Seoul today. You will see Cica creams, Cica serums, Cica masks on every shelf. The Asian beauty market recognized what Western markets missed. They simply gave it a catchier name. This pattern requires explanation. Every benefit that gotu kola provides threatens an existing industry. Consider the scale of what is at stake. The global collagen market was valued at over $10 billion in 2024. Industry projections estimate it will reach $26 billion by 2033. That represents annual growth of 11%. Every year, more consumers purchase collagen supplements, collagen drinks, collagen creams. The collagen supplement market specifically reached nearly $6 billion in 2024. Analysts project it will exceed $13 billion by 2034. These are not small numbers. These are industries employing thousands of people, generating billions in shareholder value, funding research that supports their products. Now consider the economics of collagen production. The industry relies on complex extraction processes. Animal hides, fish scales, and bone matrices must be processed through multi-step hydrolysis. Purification requires specialized equipment. Quality control demands laboratory testing. Cold chain shipping prevents degradation. Every step adds cost. Every step creates barriers to entry. A farmer with a backyard garden cannot compete with this infrastructure, or so the industry believed. Gotu kola breaks this model. The plant requires no processing for topical use. Fresh leaves can be crushed and applied directly to skin. Dried leaves can be steeped as tea. Simple water or alcohol extractions concentrate the active compounds. No factory required. No patents are possible on crushing a leaf. The research funding tells the story clearly. Search PubMed for collagen supplements and you will find thousands of studies, many funded by industry. Companies sponsor trials that support their products. Positive results generate marketing claims. Marketing claims drive sales. Sales fund more research. The cycle perpetuates itself. Search PubMed for Centella asiatica collagen. The numbers are smaller. The funding comes primarily from university research grants in India, Korea, and Thailand. Government institutions in Asia fund these studies. Western industry money flows elsewhere. One comprehensive review published in the Indian Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences noted this explicitly. Despite extensive studies over decades on the active components and mechanisms, the research outcome remains unsatisfactory. More scientific data are needed to justify the plant's increasing use. The researchers called for more funding, but the funding did not arrive. The naming fragmentation compounds the problem. A researcher studying Centella asiatica might never discover studies published under Mandukaparni. A database search for Gotu kola can miss papers indexed under Brahmi. A scientist investigating tiger grass may remain unaware of Ji Shui Kyo research. The knowledge exists in fragments that never connect. The regulatory structure amplifies these barriers. Collagen supplements face scrutiny around health claims, and compliance costs for labeling requirements vary by region. Large corporations can afford regulatory navigation. They employ legal teams and compliance officers. Small-scale growers cannot. The complexity favors industrial players who prefer patentable inputs over plants that spread without permission. Consider the business model of the supplement industry. Companies sell monthly supplies. Consumers purchase repeatedly. Quarterly earnings depend on repeat transactions. Shareholder value increases with customer retention. The entire financial structure depends on ongoing consumption. Repeat purchases drive profit. Gotu kola threatens that model fundamentally. Plant it once and harvest indefinitely. A single cutting in a window box provides leaves for months. Those leaves can be propagated into more plants. Those plants can be shared with neighbors. Within a year, an entire community could be growing their own supply. No repeat purchases, no shipping costs, no corporate intermediaries. This is a direct disruption. The collagen industry faces additional supply chain vulnerabilities. Raw materials come from animal sources, bovine hides from cattle operations, marine collagen from fish processing waste, and porcine sources from pig farming. Each source faces potential disruption. Disease outbreaks affect cattle, overfishing depletes marine stocks, religious and ethical concerns limit porcine acceptance. Vulnerabilities are real. Gotu kola faces none of these vulnerabilities. The plant grows in tropical and subtropical climates worldwide. It requires no animal inputs. It propagates from cuttings without seed purchases. It tolerates poor soil and partial shade. It adapts to local conditions with minimal intervention. None of the usual supply shocks apply. This is not conspiracy. This is economics. Companies invest in research that supports their products. They do not invest in research that makes their products unnecessary. Universities pursue grants from available funders. The funders favor patentable interventions. A self-spreading plant cannot be patented. A simple leaf extract cannot be protected. The funding flows elsewhere. The research follows the funding. The knowledge gaps persist, but the plant waited. It always waited. Gotu kola has grown across Asia for millennia. It survived empires rising and falling. It survived colonial extraction. It survived industrialization. It survived being ignored by the most powerful cosmetics and supplement industries in history. And it is still there, still growing, still producing the same triterpenoids that increase collagen by 78%. Weighted and resilient, you can grow it yourself. Gotu kola thrives in USDA growing zones 7 through 11. This covers the southern United States, coastal California, and equivalent climates in southern Europe and Australia. The plant tolerates a range of conditions once established. Grow it where the climate allows. Start with cuttings rather than seeds. Seeds require patience. Germination takes 30 to 90 days under standard conditions. Some seeds require 12 weeks or longer. Cuttings root in 10 to 14 days, sometimes faster. Use cuttings for speed. Find a healthy plant at a nursery or herb supplier. Snip a 4 to 6 inch segment of a runner, cutting just below a leaf node. Remove the lower leaves. You can dip the cut end in rooting hormone, but the plant often roots without it. Place the cutting 1 inch deep in moist potting soil. Space multiple cuttings about 6 inches apart. Water consistently. This is the critical requirement. Gotu kola does not tolerate dry conditions. Keep the soil evenly moist. Daily watering may be necessary for potted plants. The plant can actually grow directly in shallow water or boggy areas. If you have a pond or water feature, Go-To Cola will thrive at the margins. Critical, keep moisture steady. The ideal soil pH is slightly acidic to neutral, falling between 5.5 and 7. While Go-To Cola tolerates full sun, it performs best in partial shade. Think of where it grows naturally: forest edges, stream banks, dappled light beneath tree canopies. Recreate these conditions and the plant rewards you. Ideal placement is dappled shade. Once established, Go-To Cola spreads rapidly. Those horizontal stolons extend outward, rooting at every node. A single plant becomes a patch becomes a carpet. You will find yourself giving away cuttings to friends and neighbors. The plant has no interest in staying contained. Spreads easily. Harvesting begins once the plant is well established, typically 3 to 6 months after planting. The leaves are ready when mature, green, and approximately 1 to 2 inches in diameter. Use clean scissors to snip individual leaves or small clusters. Avoid over-harvesting. Take no more than 1/3 of the foliage at a time. Allow the plant to regenerate between harvests. With proper management, a single container can provide continuous harvests for years. Use the leaves fresh in salads. The flavor is mild and slightly bitter with herbaceous notes. Add them to smoothies, blend them into vegetable juices, or steep dried leaves as tea. The traditional preparations remain effective because they work. For topical use, crush fresh leaves into a paste. Apply directly to skin as a mask. Leave for 15 to 20 minutes before rinsing. The active compounds penetrate the skin directly. No extraction required, no processing needed. For a more concentrated preparation, create a simple tincture. Fill a jar with fresh leaves. Cover with vodka or another high-proof alcohol. Seal and store in a dark place for 4 to 6 weeks. Strain out the plant material. The resulting liquid contains concentrated triterpenoids. Apply topically or add small amounts to creams and lotions. The leaves also store well when dried. Spread fresh leaves on screens in a warm, dry location away from direct sunlight. Allow to dry completely over several days. Store in airtight containers away from light. Dried leaves retain potency for a year or longer. You can also create an infusion oil for daily skincare. Take dried Go-To Cola leaves and place them in a clean glass jar. Cover with a carrier oil such as jojoba, sweet almond, or coconut oil. The ratio should be approximately 1 part dried leaves to 4 parts oil. Seal the jar and place it in a sunny window for 2 to 3 weeks. Shake gently every few days. After the infusion period, strain through cheesecloth and store in a dark glass bottle. This oil can be applied directly to the face and body before bed. The triterpenoids absorb slowly through the night while your skin regenerates. For those living in colder climates where outdoor cultivation is impossible, indoor growing offers a reliable alternative. Use a wide, shallow container rather than a deep pot. Go-To Cola spreads horizontally rather than growing deep roots. A window box or seed tray works perfectly. Place near a bright window but out of direct afternoon sun. Supplement with a grow light during winter months when daylight hours shrink. Humidity matters for indoor plants. Dry indoor air during heating season can stress the leaves. Place a tray of pebbles and water beneath the pot to increase local humidity. Mist the leaves regularly. Group multiple plants together to create a microclimate of higher moisture. Watch for yellowing leaves. This typically indicates either overwatering or underwatering. Check the soil moisture before adding water. The surface can dry slightly between waterings, but the soil should remain moist at root level. Drainage holes are essential. Standing water causes root rot quickly. Fertilize lightly during the growing season. A balanced liquid fertilizer diluted to half strength works well. Apply every 2 to 4 weeks from spring through fall. Reduce feeding during winter when growth slows naturally. Propagation becomes almost automatic once the plant establishes. New runners extend beyond the pot edges. They dangle searching for soil. Simply place a second pot nearby. Guide the runner onto the new soil surface. Pin it down gently with a small stone or bent wire. Roots develop within days. Once established, sever the connection to the mother plant. You now have 2 independent plants from 1 original cutting. The mathematics of this propagation deserve attention. Start with 1 plant in January. By March, that plant has produced 3 rooted runners. Each of those runners can be separated, and now you have 4 plants. By June, those 4 plants have each produced 3 more runners, and now you have 16 plants. By September, 64 plants. By the end of 1 year, a single cutting can theoretically produce over 200 individual plants, each one producing leaves, each one synthesizing the same triterpenoids, each one capable of further propagation. Compare this to the collagen supplement model. 1 bottle lasts 30 days. 1 bottle costs between $20 and $60 depending on brand and quality. 12 bottles per year. $240 to $720 annually, every year, forever. The expense never ends because the supply never becomes self-sustaining. Go-To Cola inverts this equation entirely. 1 plant costs $5 to $15 at a nursery. 1 plant becomes 200 plants within a year. 200 plants provide more leaves than a single household could ever consume. The excess can be dried and stored. The excess can be shared with family and friends. The excess can even be sold at farmers markets to offset the initial investment. This is the economics that the supplement industry does not want you to understand. They profit from scarcity. They profit from complexity. They profit from your belief that collagen must come from a factory. Go-To Cola proves otherwise. Every time a stolon roots at a new node, the economics shift further in your favor. This is what resilience looks like. Not serums shipped from laboratories across continents. Not supplements manufactured in industrial facilities. Resilience is a plant that returns every season without asking. A plant that heals your skin, builds your collagen, and propagates itself while you sleep. The question was never, why did Asia hide this plant? Asia hid nothing. Sri Lankan families eat Go-To Cola Sambol at every gathering. Thai street vendors sell the juice openly on every corner. Indian Ayurvedic practitioners recommend it to patients daily. Chinese medicine shops stock dried leaves on open shelves. The knowledge was always there, always public, always available. The question is, why Western systems failed to notice? Why billions were spent on collagen supplements while a backyard plant could replace them? Why 78% collagen increases remained unknown to populations spending premium prices for 5% improvements? The answer is not conspiracy. The answer is structure. Economic systems see what benefits economic systems. Research follows funding. Funding follows patents. Patents require control. Go-To Cola cannot be controlled. It self-propagates. It spreads through stolons. It roots at every node. It becomes wild. It becomes free. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. 3 generations of Western consumers grew up without ever hearing the word Go-To Cola, not because anyone hid it, because no one profited from revealing it. But you know now. You know that the highest collagen-stimulating plant exists. You know that it spreads from cuttings in days. You know that hundreds of millions of people consume it weekly. You know that modern research validates ancient applications. You know that you can grow it in most climates with minimal effort. You know that one cutting creates permanent collagen infrastructure. The supplement companies will not tell you. The skincare industry will not tell you. The dermatology establishment will not prioritize plants over procedures. The information threatens too many revenue streams, but the plant does not care about revenue streams. It cares about spreading. It cares about rooting at every node. It cares about establishing itself wherever moisture and warmth permit. For 2,000 years, Go-To Cola has pursued this single agenda. It will continue for 2,000 more. The wounded tigers knew. They sought out this plant instinctively. They rolled in its leaves to heal their wounds. They trusted what their bodies told them. Perhaps it is time we did the same.
Walk into any Vietnamese restaurant tonight. Watch the table next to you. They will be eating a stir-fried green with hollow stems that crunch between their teeth. This is not bok choy. This is not spinach. This is rau mung. Water spinach, and it appears in more Asian meals than any other single vegetable. In Vietnam, they consider it the national vegetable. 60% of home-cooked meals include it. Mothers stir-fry it with garlic in the time it takes to boil rice. Street vendors sell it from carts at every corner in Ho Chi Minh City. The dish costs less than $1 and delivers more nutrition than most Western salads. In China, they call it Kong Shin Kai. The name translates to hollow heart vegetable. The hollow stems are not a defect. They are a feature. They allow the plant to do something almost no other vegetable can do. But we will get to that. In Thailand, they call it pak bung. Street food vendors cook it in round bottom woks over flames so intense the dish finishes in under 60 seconds. The technique is called pad pak bung phai daeng, stir-fried water spinach with fire. Tourists line up to watch the flames shoot 3 feet into the air. They do not realize they are watching the preparation of one of the most nutritious vegetables on earth. In the Philippines, they call it kangkong. In Indonesia, kangkung. In Malaysia, the dish kangkung belacan has become an unofficial national treasure. Shrimp paste, chilies, and water spinach combine into something that appears on tables from fishing villages to 5-star hotels. Here is the first clue that something went wrong in the West. You know bok choy, you know Thai basil, you know lemongrass. These appear in Western grocery stores, in cooking shows, in meal delivery kits. Water spinach, consumed by more people than all those combined, barely exists in Western consciousness. Most Americans have never heard the name. The problem begins with fragmentation. Koreans call it something different. Japanese call it something different. Vietnamese, Chinese, Thai, Filipino, Indonesian, Malaysian, 8 names across 8 countries. No unified Western identity. When a plant has no consistent name, it has no shelf space, no cookbook presence, no research funding identity. The fragmentation was not intentional, but the result was erasure. Compare this to cilantro, same plant as coriander, different name for leaves versus seeds. But Western food culture unified these names. Everyone knows cilantro. It appears in every grocery store. Water spinach never received this unification. It remained foreign in each separate encounter. Never familiar, never integrated, never understood. But here is what makes water spinach different from every other vegetable you have never heard of. It does not need soil. It evolved to grow in water, and what that means for anyone with a windowsill is revolutionary. Water spinach evolved in the Mekong Delta. Picture the landscape, a river system that floods for 6 months every year. Water everywhere, soil submerged beneath brown currents. Most plants would drown. Most plants did drown. But water spinach faced a choice: adapt or disappear. It adapted. The hollow stems you see when you cut water spinach are not empty space. They are parenchyma tissue, specialized air channels that transport oxygen from leaves to submerged roots. Most plants die in standing water within days because roots need oxygen and waterlogged soil contains none. Water spinach solved this problem 10,000 years ago. The plant breathes through its stems. Air enters through the leaves, travels down the hollow channels, and reaches the roots underwater. The plant carries its own atmosphere wherever it grows. Daniel Austin documented this adaptation in his 2007 research published in Economic Botany. The parenchyma tissue occupies 60% of the stem cross-section. No other commonly eaten vegetable possesses this architecture. The plant is engineered by evolution for exactly what the title promises: growth in nothing but water. What this means practically is profound. Soil is not required. Soil is not even preferred. Research from Pallotta and Crossman, published in 1999, documented that water spinach grows faster, cleaner, and often more nutritiously in water-only systems than in traditional soil cultivation. The vitamins concentrate more efficiently when the plant does what evolution designed it to do. Then there is the speed. Westphal and Jansen measured growth rates in Southeast Asian cultivation trials, 10 to 15 centimeters per day. Per day. No other edible plant approaches this velocity. A cutting placed in water on Monday morning shows visible growth by Tuesday afternoon. By Friday, you have harvestable leaves. By the following Friday, you have harvestable leaves again. The speed borders on absurd. But growth speed is only half the story. What happens when you cut this plant explains why a single purchase can feed you forever. When you cut most plants, they weaken, they redirect energy to healing the wound, and they slow their growth while recovering from damage. When you cut water spinach, it multiplies. This is meristematic biology documented in peer-reviewed research. Every node on a water spinach stem contains dormant lateral buds. These nodes are the bumpy joints where leaves attach. Inside each node, sleeping buds wait for a signal. When you cut the main stem, you send that signal. Hormone distribution shifts within hours. Auxin, the growth hormone that keeps lateral buds dormant, redistributes away from the nodes. The dormant buds activate within 24 to 48 hours. Where one stem existed, 2 emerge. Cut those 2 stems, 4 emerge. The multiplication continues with every harvest. Edie and Ho tracked this phenomenon in their 1969 study, published in Economic Botany. They followed single stem cuttings through Malaysian growing trials. One cutting produced 15 sequential harvests. Not 15 leaves, but 15 complete harvests of substantial edible material. The same cutting regrew month after month until the researchers stopped counting. James Stevens expanded this research in his 1994 publication in Hort Science. He documented the hormone mechanics in precise detail. The meristematic tissue concentrated at each node contains pluripotent cells capable of differentiating into stems, roots, or leaves, depending on environmental signals. Cut the stem and these cells receive the signal to become new stems. The plant treats every wound as an opportunity. Think about what this means for your grocery bill. Lettuce, buy it, use it, throw away the inedible core, buy again next week. Spinach, buy it, use it, watch the remainder wilt in your refrigerator, buy again. Kale, arugula, mixed greens. The same cycle repeats endlessly. Purchase, consumption, waste, repeat purchase. The produce industry depends on this cycle. Supermarkets depend on this cycle. Your repeated trips to the store depend on this cycle. Water spinach breaks this cycle completely. One purchase, infinite consumption, no repeat purchase necessary. The economics should concern anyone who profits from selling you vegetables. Vietnamese floating markets have operated on this regenerative principle for centuries. Picture the scene: wooden boats crowded together on brown river water at dawn. Farmers selling produce directly from their vessels. A farmer cuts water spinach and hands it to a customer. The remaining stems sit in water on the boat deck. During the trip back to the farm, those stems begin regenerating. By the next market day, harvestable material returns. The crop perpetuates itself between sales. No replanting required. No new seeds purchased. The same stems produce food, generation after generation. So you have a plant that grows in water, regrows when cut, and propagates indefinitely from a single purchase. But what exactly are you eating? The nutritional analysis answers questions you did not know to ask. Water spinach contains 2.5 milligrams of iron per 100 grams of fresh weight. Standard spinach, the regular Popeye approved variety, contains 2.7 milligrams per 100 grams. Nearly identical numbers on paper, but here is what nutritionists understand that marketing departments ignore. Spinach iron comes bundled with oxalates. These compounds bind to iron in your digestive system and block absorption. Your body passes most spinach iron without ever using it. Research published by Iguanay in 2011 in the International Science Research Journal found that water spinach iron bioavailability was 40% higher than terrestrial spinach. Lower oxalate content means less interference. You absorb more iron from water spinach than from the vegetable named after iron absorption. Popeye chose poorly. The vitamin A numbers reveal a similar story. Water spinach contains 6,300 international units per 100 grams. Carrots contain 8,350 international units per 100 grams. Carrots win on paper, but consider the full picture. Carrots require soil. Carrots require months of underground growth. Carrots require purchase at every use because carrots do not regrow when you cut them. Water spinach regenerates in water every 2 weeks. The vitamin A per dollar spent is incomparable. The vitamin A per effort expended is incomparable. The vitamin A per trip to the grocery store does not even have a comparison. Vitamin C measurement adds another dimension. Water spinach contains 55 milligrams per 100 grams. An orange contains 53 milligrams per 100 grams. Read those numbers again. The vegetable and the fruit are nutritionally equivalent for vitamin C, but oranges do not regrow in water bottles on your windowsill. Oranges require orchards that take years to mature. They require global shipping infrastructure moving fruit across oceans. They require refrigerated transport burning fuel to keep produce fresh. Water spinach requires a cup and sunlight. The USDA Food Data Central Database confirms additional nutrients most people never consider: calcium at 77 milligrams per 100 grams, potassium at 312 milligrams per 100 grams, folate at 57 micrograms per 100 grams. That folate number matters profoundly. Folate is the vitamin most critical during pregnancy, most often supplemented, and most expensive in synthetic form. Doctors prescribe folate supplements to pregnant women worldwide. The supplement industry profits from every prescription. Water spinach grows folate in water bottles for free. The global vitamin supplement market generates $150 billion annually as of 2024. Americans alone spend $35 billion on vitamins each year. Iron supplements in brown bottles, vitamin A capsules in orange packaging, vitamin C tablets in citrus-flavored chewables. Each product requires manufacturing facilities, encapsulation machinery, quality control testing, packaging lines, warehouse storage, and shipping logistics. Retail markup occurs at every step. The complexity creates jobs and generates profits across multiple industries. Water spinach threatens this entire supply chain. One plant contains iron, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, potassium, and folate. One plant regrows indefinitely. One plant requires zero repeat purchase. A product that replaces itself cannot generate recurring revenue. A vitamin source that multiplies when cut cannot sustain quarterly earnings growth. The economics explain the obscurity better than any conspiracy theory. The nutrition facts alone justify growing this plant, but the medicinal research explains why traditional healers have prescribed it for 2,000 years. In 2000, a researcher named Malala Vidani published findings in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology that startled the scientific community. Water spinach leaves contain insulin-like peptides, not insulin itself, but compounds that function through similar mechanisms. Laboratory trials using diabetic rat models showed a 30% blood glucose reduction from water spinach consumption. The pharmaceutical industry generates billions selling drugs designed to achieve exactly this effect. Water spinach achieves it in a stir-fry. Chen and colleagues expanded this research in their 2010 publication, also in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology. They documented chlorogenic acid content at 12.4 milligrams per gram of dry weight. Chlorogenic acid protects liver cells from toxic damage. The concentration in water spinach exceeds coffee, the source most Westerners associate with this compound. Every morning, millions of people drink coffee, partly for chlorogenic acid benefits. Water spinach delivers more of the compound per gram than the beverage they depend on. The Food and Agriculture Organization documented traditional uses in their 1999 publication on aquatic vegetables of Southeast Asia. Chinese medicine has prescribed water spinach for digestive complaints since 300 BCE. That is over 2,300 years of continuous medicinal application. Generation after generation of healers reaching for the same plant to treat the same conditions. Mitra's 2007 research, published in Pharmaceutical Biology, finally explained the mechanism. Water spinach contains specific laxative compounds that traditional healers identified through observation millennia before gas chromatography existed. The science validated what grandmothers already knew. The plant works. It has always worked. Western medicine simply never looked closely enough to understand why. Hamid's 2011 systematic review compiled evidence across dozens of studies from universities throughout Asia. Anti-inflammatory properties were confirmed, antioxidant capacity was measured, antimicrobial effects were documented. The same plant, the same leaves, the same vegetable you can grow in a water bottle on your windowsill offers those benefits while the pharmaceutical industry sells isolated compounds in expensive packaging. Search PubMed for water spinach, medicinal properties, and you will find approximately 200 studies. Search for aspirin, and you will find over 50,000. This disparity does not reflect effectiveness, it reflects funding. Aspirin has pharmaceutical companies sponsoring research. Water spinach has centuries of traditional use and emerging research from Asian institutions that Western databases historically under-indexed. So why can you not buy this at Walmart? Why does every American grocery store not stock it between the lettuce and the kale? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about how food systems decide what you are allowed to eat. In 1999, the United States Department of Agriculture added water spinach to the federal noxious weed list. The same plant that 1 billion people eat weekly became illegal to transport across state lines without permits. The classification seems absurd until you understand the reasoning behind it. Water spinach survival adaptations create regulatory nightmares. The same characteristics that make it perfect for home growing make it terrifying for waterway management. It grows 10 to 15 centimeters per day. It propagates from any stem fragment that contacts water. It tolerates flooding, drought, and pollution that would kill other plants. Picture this vegetable released into Florida canal systems. It would spread uncontrollably. Native aquatic ecosystems would face a competitor evolved for exactly these conditions over 10,000 years. Holmes' 1997 reference work titled World Weeds: Natural Histories and Distribution classified water spinach as the 8th worst aquatic weed on Earth. The same page noted it was Asia's most important leafy vegetable. The plant is too good at surviving. Its resilience is simultaneously its virtue for home growers and its regulatory crime for environmental agencies. The paradox could not be more stark. A vegetable eaten by 1 billion people weekly, banned from interstate commerce in America, not because it harms humans who eat it, because it might harm ecosystems if it escapes cultivation. The government accidentally identified the perfect survival food and classified it as a threat. But loopholes exist. Florida, Texas, and Hawaii issue cultivation permits. Asian grocery stores in major cities stock freshwater spinach under various legal arrangements. H-Mart locations carry it regularly. 99 Ranch Market stocks it in the produce section. Local Vietnamese and Chinese markets in cities with significant Asian populations keep it available for communities that never stopped eating it. The plant is not impossible to obtain. It is merely bureaucratically complicated in some states. And once you obtain it legally, what happens in your own home is your own business. Now you understand what this plant is. Now you understand why you have not heard of it. Here is how you grow it anyway. Visit an Asian grocery store, H-Mart, 99 Ranch, or your local Vietnamese market. Look for Kong Kong, Ong Choi, or water spinach on the signage. Buy the freshest bunch available. Stems should be firm and crisp, not wilted or slimy. Spend $2 or $3 maximum. This is your last purchase. At home, cut stems to 6 to 8 inches in length. Examine each cutting and ensure it has at least 2 nodes. These are the bumpy joints where leaves attach to the stem. The nodes contain the meristematic tissue that generates new growth. No nodes means no regeneration. Remove lower leaves that would sit below the water line. Submerged leaves rot and contaminate the water. Clean stems below, leaves above. The division is simple. Place cuttings in a clear water bottle or glass jar. Wide-mouth containers work better than narrow necks. Fill with water to cover the bottom 2 to 3 inches of stem. The nodes should be submerged, but upper leaves should remain above water. Use a bottle that lets you see the roots. Position the container on a windowsill, receiving 4 or more hours of sunlight daily. Southern exposure works best in the northern hemisphere. Water spinach tolerates lower light conditions, but grows faster with more sun. The parenchyma tissue evolved under tropical intensity. Give it what it wants. Change the fresh water every 2 to 3 days. Stagnant water breeds bacteria and algae. Fresh water keeps the system clean and delivers dissolved oxygen to developing roots. This is the only maintenance required. Roots emerge within 1 week. You will see white threads extending from submerged nodes. These are water roots, different from soil roots, adapted for aquatic nutrient absorption. Their appearance confirms successful establishment. New leaf growth appears within 2 weeks. The stems elongate toward the light. Fresh leaves unfurl from growing tips. The plant has accepted its new home. Harvest by cutting above a node with clean scissors or a sharp knife. Always leave at least 2 nodes below your cut. These remaining nodes will activate dormant buds and produce new stems within days. Cut too low and you remove the regeneration capacity. Cut above the nodes and the cycle continues indefinitely. 1 grocery store purchase, 1 water bottle, unlimited vitamins, growing on your windowsill, no soil required, no fertilizer needed, no expertise demanded, just water, light, and the biology of a plant that evolved 10,000 years ago to do exactly this. The supplement companies will not tell you about this. The grocery chains profit from your repeated purchases. The pharmaceutical industry prefers you buy their manufactured alternatives. But the plant does not care about profit margins or market share or quarterly earnings reports. Water spinach cares about one thing: growing. It has grown across Asia for millennia. It has fed 1 billion people this week alone. It has waited patiently in Asian grocery stores for anyone curious enough to take a cutting home. Now you know. Now you can grow free vitamins in a water bottle on your windowsill. Now you understand why this knowledge remained hidden from Western consumers while Asian grandmothers have practiced it for generations.
Walk into any health food store today, you will find shelves dedicated to protein powders extracted from peas and processed in factories. You will find magnesium supplements shipped from facilities across oceans. You will find products promising complete amino acid profiles at premium prices. Meanwhile, a single grain delivers all of this from a plant that returns every spring without permission. The numbers do not lie. Per 100 grams of uncooked grain, this plant delivers 248 milligrams of magnesium. That represents 59% of your daily requirement in a single serving. Now consider spinach, the vegetable that Western nutrition celebrates as the gold standard for magnesium. Raw spinach contains 79 milligrams per 100 grams. The difference is not marginal. The difference is fundamental. But magnesium is just the beginning. This grain contains 7.6 milligrams of iron per 100 grams. That covers 42% of your daily iron needs. The calcium content rivals dairy. The fiber content exceeds most whole grains. And the protein story changes everything you thought you knew about plant nutrition. For decades, nutritionists repeated a simple claim: plant proteins are incomplete. They lack essential amino acids. You need to combine foods carefully or eat animal products to get complete nutrition. This grain destroys that narrative entirely. Researchers analyzing this grain found all 9 essential amino acids present: histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, valine. Every single amino acid your body cannot produce on its own exists in this grain. Scientists measured its biological value at 75, closer to perfect than any other grain protein ever tested. The lysine content alone rewrites the rules. Lysine is the amino acid most commonly deficient in cereal grains. It plays critical roles in calcium absorption, collagen production, and immune function. This grain contains 5.3 to 6.3% lysine in its protein. That is roughly twice the lysine content of wheat and 3 times that of maize. The grain that feeds billions worldwide cannot match what this forgotten crop delivers. And yet there is more. The leaves of this plant contain more than twice the antioxidants of spinach, more polyphenols than kale. Both the grain and the greens are edible, meaning one plant provides 2 distinct food sources from a single planting. The question forms naturally: if this grain outperforms spinach in magnesium, rivals meat in protein quality, and provides more antioxidants than celebrated superfoods, why have most people in the Western world never heard of it? The answer requires traveling back 8,000 years. In the highlands of Oaxaca, Mexico, ancient peoples first cultivated this grain between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago. The Mayans recognized its value and passed the knowledge forward through generations. But it was the Aztec Empire that elevated this crop to something approaching sacred status. By 1400, the Aztec Empire had codified this grain as one of 3 mandatory tribute crops. 17 provinces across the empire were required to send annual tribute to the capital city of Tenochtitlan. The quantity was staggering. 20,000 tons of this grain flowed into the imperial capital every single year. Picture the great marketplaces of Tenochtitlan. Spanish conquistadors who witnessed these markets described them as larger and more organized than any in Europe. In the grain sections, this crop occupied prominent space alongside maize and beans. Farmers brought it from villages across the empire. Merchants traded it by the basket. Families ground it into flour for daily meals. But the grain served purposes beyond simple nutrition. During festivals honoring Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war, priests performed elaborate ceremonies that terrified Spanish observers. They mixed the grain flour with honey and sometimes with sacrificial blood to form a dough called soali. Artisans sculpted this dough into figures representing their gods. Priests paraded these figures through the streets of Tenochtitlan while thousands watched. Then the figures were broken apart, and the people ate them. This ritual proved catastrophic for the grain's future. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico with roughly 500 soldiers. Within 2 years, the Aztec Empire would collapse. And with its fall came a systematic campaign of cultural destruction that specifically targeted this grain. The Spanish conquistadors and the Catholic Church viewed the Tzoali ceremonies with horror. To their eyes, indigenous people were creating idols of their gods and consuming them in a ritual that looked disturbingly similar to Catholic communion. This was blasphemy of the highest order. The response was swift and brutal. Colonial authorities banned cultivation of this grain outright. They burned fields where it grew. They issued decrees making its production illegal across the conquered territories. And for those who defied the ban, the punishment was severe. Growing this grain could result in having your hands cut off. Some faced execution. Consider what this reveals about the grain's importance. The Spanish did not ban maize. They did not ban beans. They did not systematically destroy cacao, despite its role in Aztec rituals. They chose to eliminate specifically this grain precisely because of its sacred significance to indigenous culture. Colonial administrators understood something that modern historians sometimes miss. Depriving a population of a sacred food weakens that population spiritually and physically. Aztec warriors ate this grain before battle for strength. Priests used it in ceremonies that bound communities together. By eliminating the grain, the Spanish eliminated a pillar of indigenous identity. The campaign nearly succeeded. Across central Mexico, cultivation of this grain dropped to almost nothing. Farmers who had grown it for generations stopped planting. Fields that had produced 20,000 tons annually fell silent. But the grain had one advantage that empire could not overcome. It grows like a weed. In the remote mountains of Oaxaca, far from Spanish colonial centers, indigenous communities continued cultivating this grain in secret. The Mayans, whose territories remained partially outside Spanish control, maintained their crops. And in fields across the former Aztec Empire, the grain volunteered itself. Even when no one planted it, seeds from previous harvests germinated in disturbed soil. The plant that empire tried to destroy kept returning. For nearly 500 years, this grain existed in shadows. Spanish colonial records ignored it. European botanical texts overlooked it. When scientists began cataloging global crops in the 1800s, this grain received minimal attention. The plant was technically known, but practically invisible. It was not until the 1970s that Western researchers began examining what had been lost. Scientists studying alternative crops discovered a grain with properties that seemed almost designed for the challenges facing modern agriculture. And what they found explains why this grain may be more important for human survival than any crop currently dominating global food systems. The grain belongs to a special category of plants that use C4 photosynthesis. Most crops, including wheat, rice, and soybeans, use C3 photosynthesis. The technical difference matters enormously in a warming world. C4 plants show higher water use efficiency. They maintain higher photosynthesis rates under elevated temperatures, and they thrive even in nitrogen-poor soil where other crops struggle. As climate change accelerates, traditional crops face mounting stress. Droughts reduce yields, heat waves damage harvests. Unpredictable rainfall patterns disrupt planting schedules. Farmers across the American Midwest watch their corn wither during summer heat domes. Rice paddies in Southeast Asia face saltwater intrusion from rising seas. Wheat harvests in Southern Europe decline year after year. This grain offers something different. Researchers have confirmed its exceptional tolerance to drought. Once established, the plant survives on minimal water. It tolerates high salinity soils that would kill conventional crops. It adapts to both hilly terrain and open plains. It continues producing grain through conditions that devastate other harvests. The yield potential is equally remarkable. In Missouri, agricultural trials routinely achieve 1,000 pounds per acre. Some trials have doubled that figure. Across South and Central America, yields reach 4,600 to 7,200 kilograms per hectare under optimal conditions. A single plant can produce more than 500 grams of grain. But the self-seeding characteristic truly sets this grain apart. The seeds are extraordinarily small, between 850 and 1,700 seeds per gram. A single plant produces thousands of these tiny seeds. When harvest occurs, some seeds inevitably fall to the ground. They remain viable in soil for years. When spring arrives, they germinate without human intervention. Farmers who grow this grain describe a phenomenon that sounds almost miraculous to those accustomed to annual seed purchases. You plant once. The following year, volunteers appear where seeds dropped during harvest. The year after that, more volunteers. Within a few seasons, the grain has naturalized. It returns each spring without permission, without purchase, without planting. One farm in the northeastern United States documented this directly. After several years of cultivation, the grain seeded itself so prolifically that farmers now harvest young plants as a thinning method. They eat the greens throughout summer and still harvest grain at season's end. The crop has become self-sustaining infrastructure. This characteristic explains one of the deeper mysteries surrounding this grain's obscurity. Modern agricultural systems depend on repeat purchases. Farmers spend $60 billion annually on seeds globally. Corn, soy, wheat, cotton, all annual crops requiring new seed every planting season. The business model demands repetition. Farmers must buy again and again and again. A self-seeding grain breaks this model entirely. Buy seed once, plant once, harvest forever. No corporation benefits from this transaction. No quarterly earnings improve. No shareholder value increases. The pattern extends beyond seed sales. This grain requires minimal processing for consumption. You can cook the whole grain like rice. You can grind it into flour with simple equipment. You can pop it like popcorn with nothing but a dry pan and heat. No industrial facility is required, no extraction technology to license, no complex supply chain to maintain. Compare this to the foods that dominate Western grocery shelves. Protein powders require factory processing. Magnesium supplements require extraction and encapsulation. Breakfast cereals require industrial transformation of raw ingredients. Each step adds cost. Each step adds profit margin. Each step adds distance between the food and the person eating it. A grain that requires almost no processing cannot generate processing revenue. A crop that requires no annual seed purchases cannot generate seed company profits. A food that grows itself cannot be controlled by the systems that control other foods. This is not conspiracy. This is economics. Companies fund research that supports their products. They do not fund research that makes their products unnecessary. Universities pursue grants from available sources. The sources favor patentable interventions. A self-seeding ancient grain cannot be patented. The funding flows elsewhere. The research follows the funding. The knowledge gaps persist. And yet the market is finally awakening to what indigenous peoples knew for millennia. The global amaranth market size was estimated at $13.9 billion in 2025 and is expected to reach $21.8 billion by 2033, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 6%. Global amaranth cultivation exceeded 600,000 hectares in 2024. In the United States alone, amaranth cultivation covers approximately 12,000 hectares, producing nearly 30,000 metric tons of grain annually. Asia-Pacific now dominates the amaranth market with the largest revenue share of nearly 43%. The region has a large population of health-conscious consumers who are increasingly adopting plant-based diets and looking for healthy and nutritious food products, leading to an increase in demand for amaranth. The region has also seen a growing trend of gluten-free products due to increasing awareness of gluten intolerance and celiac disease. And as amaranth is naturally gluten-free, it has become a popular ingredient. Yet despite this explosive market growth, most Western consumers still do not know the grain's name. The growth happens in specialty health stores, in Asian markets, in Latin American groceries. Mainstream supermarkets continue dedicating aisle space to processed alternatives, while this ancient grain remains confined to obscure sections. And yet some institutions recognize this grain's extraordinary potential. NASA scientists studying crops for long-duration space missions identified this grain as exceptionally promising. The reasons align perfectly with space agriculture requirements: high nutrient density in minimal growing space, tolerance for harsh conditions, edible leaves and seeds providing dietary variety. National Geographic reported that NASA recommended this grain for consumption in space missions. The World Health Organization named it a well-balanced food suitable for global nutrition programs. Research published in peer-reviewed journals confirms that amaranth may find wide application in the prevention and treatment of some civilization diseases such as ischemic heart disease, allergy, type 2 diabetes, and celiac disease. The health benefits attributed include decreasing plasma cholesterol levels, stimulating the immune system, exerting an anti-tumor activity, reducing blood glucose levels, and improving conditions of hypertension and anemia. The grain contains squalene, a compound previously sourced primarily from shark liver oil. Cosmetic and pharmaceutical companies prize squalene for its properties. Shark populations suffered from harvesting pressure to meet demand. Amaranth oil includes 5 to 8% squalene, a compound also found in olive oil but typically at 0.5 to 1%. More accessible, more affordable, more sustainable than hunting sharks. Some animal studies have found that amaranth may have cholesterol-lowering properties. One study in hamsters showed that amaranth oil decreased total and bad LDL cholesterol by 15% and 22% respectively. Russian researchers found that patients with coronary heart disease and hypertension showed benefits from including amaranth in their diets, with significant decreases in total cholesterol, triglycerides, and LDL. Several studies have found that amaranth could have an anti-inflammatory effect in the body. In one test tube study, amaranth was found to reduce several markers of inflammation. Lunasin is a peptide identified in amaranth that is widely thought to have cancer-preventive benefits as well as possibly blocking inflammation that accompanies several chronic health conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Additional bioactive peptides in amaranth protein were found to have anti-hypertensive properties. Yet this research remained largely invisible to Western consumers. The studies existed in scientific journals that ordinary people never read. The findings appeared in publications written in technical language. No marketing budget promoted the results. No supplement company funded awareness campaigns. The knowledge accumulated in academic databases while grocery stores continued to sell products that this grain could partially replace. The global picture reveals the absurdity of Western ignorance. Across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, millions of people eat this grain and its greens regularly. In India, traditional dishes incorporate the leaves into everyday cooking. Nigerian cuisine features the greens in stewed preparations that have fed families for generations. Vietnamese soups use the plant in recipes passed down through centuries. The grain represents something profound. It is one of those foods that history tried to erase but could not. Colonial powers burned the fields, they cut off the hands of farmers, they banned cultivation under penalty of death. They succeeded in removing the grain from Western consciousness for 500 years, and still it grows. The ancient Greeks understood this about the plant. They named it with a word meaning the never fading, one that does not wither. They recognize something eternal in this crop that produces food, drops its seeds, and returns the following year without asking permission from anyone. Now the question shifts from history to practice. How do you actually grow this grain yourself? The process is remarkably simple. The grain thrives in USDA zones 4 through 10. This covers most of the continental United States and equivalent climate zones across Europe, Australia, and temperate Asia. If you can grow tomatoes, you can grow this grain. Start with your planting window. The grain is frost sensitive, so wait until after your last frost date to direct sow seeds in the garden. Alternatively, start seeds indoors 6 weeks before your last frost for transplanting later. The seeds germinate quickly within 3 to 4 days if temperatures stay between 60 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Choose a location with full sun. The grain tolerates partial shade but produces best in direct sunlight. Soil requirements are forgiving. The plant adapts to clay, loam, or sandy soils. It tolerates poor fertility that would limit other crops. Rich, moist soil produces the highest yields, but the grain survives and produces even in marginal conditions. Plant seeds about 1/4 inch deep. Space plants roughly 12 inches apart, though crowding is tolerated. Water during establishment, particularly in the first few weeks after germination. Once established, watering becomes optional. The grain is drought tolerant enough to survive on natural rainfall in most climates. During extended dry periods, water once or twice weekly. The growing season spans 40 to 50 days for leaf harvest and longer for grain production. Throughout summer, harvest leaves for eating fresh or cooked. The greens taste similar to spinach with slightly more earthy depth. Use them in salads. Wilt them as a side dish. Add them to soups and stews. The nutritional profile exceeds spinach in antioxidants and rivals it in other nutrients. As summer progresses, the plant develops dramatic seed heads. Some varieties produce brilliant red or purple plumes. Others show gold or green. These seed heads attract attention in any garden, providing ornamental value alongside food production. Allow some plants to fully mature and set seed. When the seed heads dry and begin dropping seeds, harvest by cutting the heads and placing them in paper bags. Shake the bags to separate seeds from chaff. Store dried seeds in airtight containers for future planting or for eating. Store seeds in a cool, dry place. The grain cooks like any whole grain. Simmer 1 part grain in 2.5 parts water for about 20 minutes until the water absorbs. The cooked grain has a slightly nutty flavor and a texture some describe as a bit gelatinous. Use it as a base for grain bowls. Add it to soups for protein and texture. Mix it into baked goods for nutritional enhancement. Popping the grain requires only a dry, hot pan. Heat the pan over high heat. Add a small amount of grain in a single layer. The seeds pop within seconds, puffing up like tiny popcorn. The popped grain makes excellent cereal, snack food, or topping for other dishes. In Mexico, this popped grain combines with honey or molasses and sometimes chocolate to create a traditional candy called alegría. The word translates to joy in English. Street vendors across Mexico City sell alegría in bars and shapes that have delighted children for generations. The tradition survived colonial suppression and continues today in markets where conquistadors once walked. For the self-seeding promise, simply allow some plants to drop their seeds naturally. Do not harvest every seed head. Leave some to mature and scatter. The following spring, watch for volunteer seedlings appearing where seeds fell. Thin these volunteers as needed. Eat the thinnings as greens. Let remaining plants grow to maturity. Repeat forever. Within a few growing seasons, you will have established a permanent food source. The grain returns each spring without purchase. It requires no expensive inputs. It feeds you protein, magnesium, iron, and antioxidants while demanding almost nothing in return. This is what resilience actually looks like. Not stockpiles of packaged foods that eventually expire. Not supplements manufactured in distant factories. Not dependence on supply chains that stretch across oceans and can break at any moment. Resilience is a plant that returns every spring without asking, a plant that feeds you, provides medicine, and replants itself while you sleep. The supplement industry will not tell you about this grain. They generate billions in annual revenue selling processed nutrients extracted from various sources. A backyard plant that provides superior nutrition threatens the entire business model. The seed industry will not promote this grain. Their profits depend on repeat purchases every planting season. A crop that self-seeds forever generates exactly one sale and then eliminates future demand. The processed food industry has no interest in this grain. They profit from complexity, from transformation, from adding value through manufacturing steps. A grain you can cook whole or pop in a pan needs no industrial processing and therefore generates no industrial profit. This is not conspiracy. This is structure. Economic systems see what benefits economic systems. Marketing budgets flow to products with profit margins. Research funding follows patentable opportunities, a self-seeding ancient grain that cannot be patented and requires no processing, simply falls outside the system's field of vision. But you see it now. You know that a grain exists with 200% more magnesium than spinach. You know it contains complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids. You know it survived 500 years of suppression by colonial powers who burned fields and severed hands. You know it self-seeds forever once established. You know NASA considered it for space missions, and the World Health Organization recommended it for global nutrition. You know its name now, amaranth. The Aztecs called it huautli. They built an empire partly on its nutritional foundation. They wove it into ceremonies that bound communities together. Spanish conquistadors tried to eliminate it from human memory. They failed. The plant waited. It always waits. Amaranth has grown across the Americas for 8,000 years. It survived the collapse of civilizations. It survived colonization. It survived 5 centuries of deliberate erasure. It survived being ignored by the most powerful food systems in human history. And it is still there, still growing, still producing more magnesium than spinach, still offering complete protein, still dropping seeds that germinate the following spring. The seed companies will not tell you. The supplement industry will not tell you. The agricultural establishment will not tell you. The information threatens too many revenue streams. But amaranth does not care about revenue streams. It cares about reproduction. It cares about spreading. It cares about establishing itself wherever soil and sunlight permit. For 8,000 years, this grain has pursued a single agenda. It will continue for 8,000 more. The question was never, why did ancient civilizations hide this grain? They did not hide anything. Aztec farmers grew it in quantities that staggered European observers. Mexican families today make alegria the same way their ancestors did before Columbus was born. African, Asian, and Latin American cuisines feature amaranth in dishes that have fed billions over centuries. The question is why Western systems failed to notice. Why did grocery stores fill with processed magnesium supplements while a plant delivering 3 times the magnesium of spinach grew unmentioned? Why did protein powder become a billion-dollar industry while a complete protein grain remained in obscure health food bins? Why did 500 years pass between colonial suppression and the moment you first heard what amaranth actually offers? The answer is structural. What cannot be patented cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. What does not enter consciousness does not exist for practical purposes. Multiple generations of Westerners grew up without knowing amaranth's name, not because anyone actively suppressed the information, because no one profited from spreading it. Researchers now recognize that amaranth may be a key factor in reducing hunger in underdeveloped countries. Amaranth should be recognized as one of the extremely promising nutritional and healthy crops with great potential to feed the global population. This potential is still underexploited. Due to climate change, the problem of world hunger, and changes in crop profiles in European and other countries around the world, it is becoming desirable to look for new plants with high nutritional potential that can be combined with health benefits. Amaranth is a plant with valuable qualities as food, and additionally with many valuable health properties. Additional important advantages of this plant are satisfactory yield performance, drought resistance, and enhanced photosynthesis. You know now. You know the numbers, you know the history, you know the science, you know the economics, and you know how to grow it. One planting, forever food. That is the promise amaranth made to humanity 8,000 years ago. It is a promise the plant keeps to this day for anyone willing to learn its name and put seeds in soil. The hands they cut off for growing this grain belong to farmers who understood something we are only now relearning. Some foods are more than nutrition. Some foods are infrastructure. Some foods are resistance. Amaranth is all 3. Find seeds, plant them, harvest leaves and grain. Let some seeds drop. Watch volunteers appear the following spring. Repeat until the pattern becomes permanent. The grain that empire tried to erase now grows in your awareness. What you do with this knowledge determines whether it also grows in your garden. Your grandparents knew some version of this. Cultures across the world never forgot. The knowledge was not lost, it was devalued. The industries profit from scarcity. These plants never hid. We just refused to see. 2 buckets, 2 plants, unlimited nutrition. The choice is yours.